Hello and welcome. Today we're going to be taking a look at the new collection from Bobbi Brown. So as of this moment, this collection is only available at Selfridges. I haven't seen it available at any other sites. And you can see as I'm moving these, how it appears that the color is moving on the palette. This is that like ribbed vinyl texture that you can see in like some things, and it allows it to appear like it's moving. I can't think of the name for what that's called right now, but we have two new Luxe eyeshadow quads. This is the formula that we love from Bobbi Brown for her Luxe eyeshadows. So we are with her traditional Luxe eyeshadow formula. And then we also have the new brightening blushes. So these have been out periodically throughout the years, and I picked them up the last time that they were available. Last time was maybe 2 years ago, and they came out in 5 different shades. So they have brought back 2 of them. So we have blushed pink and we have blushed peach. And I have to say, these are some of my favorite blushes because you know, they go on very softly, naturally. You have a little bit of a sheen because you do have these like highlighter shades and so forth here, but the blush portion is large enough if you'd like to isolate it. I just think they're beautiful. So I actually have the peach on all over, but then the pink on the apples. And we'll look at some demos of these as well. And last up, we also have the new liquid matte lipsticks from Bobbi Brown. So we have some that are part of this collection here. So I purchased one of these, and then there's another one which has misplaced itself on my desk that with the gold packaging. I'll show you that in a moment, but that is going to be part of the new permanent line. So this is a new formula. In addition to those items, I am following up on the RMS powder. We have a couple of side-by-side comparisons. And we also have some new brushes from Fude Bobo as well. And let's go ahead and we're going to start off with some swatches. Let's start with blushes. So I purchased these blushes the last time they came out. So I can't say 100% for sure that the new ones are exactly the same size and so forth. But according to all the photos, they look to be the same size, same packaging. So this one here is blushed pink. And you can see we have kind of one of those like gel powder formulas. It's very smooth and creamy. I'm going to isolate each of these shades and then we'll mix it together. And you can see we have kind of this nice, like a neutral corally pink, followed by a bright coral shade and then a deep bronzy. It's almost like a touch of bronze and a touch of copper. So those are the 3 shades separately. When you mix them together, we'll put it this way so you can see that those are all mixed. You can see we get this really beautiful, warm, glistening pink shade. And if we're to buff all of those out together, this is what we get. You can see there is a little bit of a sheen there. This is not really glittery. You know, you don't really have any pieces of glitter. I don't see any even finely milled chunks of glitter at all. You do have a little like light reflection and glistening, but I don't see any actual particles. So I think that is really nice. And it definitely gives you kind of like a nice softly highlighted glow. Then we have blushed peach. And I have to say, this is one that I use. It's one of my most used blushes because it is such a light, natural shade. So we have this nice peach, and you can see pigmentation level on this one, I would say, is slightly softer than the pink. You know, just with one dab of the blush, I feel like it's just a little bit lighter overall. So we have a nice peach, then we have kind of a peachy ivory highlighter shade, and then we have a glistening, warm, soft brown. And then if we mix those together, we have a nice, warm, neutral peach. You know, it really becomes more of that nude peach, which is how I like to wear it. And it just really looks pretty natural in the skin. So here it is buffed out, and you can see what a great everyday shade that is. So here, blush pink and blush peach. So let's look at the demos for the blush. And on the right side for each of the blushes, I used the Chikuhodo 30-2 brush. This is from the Artist series. You can also see this under the Ihodo name. And then the detail brush from Sonia G's Lotus series for the highlighter portions, the 2 smaller shades. So I wanted to show you what it kind of looked like more isolated and separated. And then on the left side, I use this Chikuhodo and Bobo collaboration owl brush. This is a dense powder foundation brush. So you could use something more dense, you know, like a kabuki. This is essentially a kabuki on a longer handle. And I use that with it all mixed. And you can see what a beautiful look you get from both sides. As for product details, these have 6.6 grams of product and they are made in Japan. And as I mentioned, these are some of my favorite blushes. I keep them right in, you know, in my drawer. I organize everything by box lids and I keep the ones I use the most right in front. And that's where these are. So if you didn't pick these up last time they were available, I would highly recommend these if you like more of a satin finish blush. That's essentially what this comes down to, is a satin finish. So again, we have the blushed pink followed by the blushed peach. And I have to say, I really love both shades. So let's go ahead. We're gonna move on to the eyeshadow quads. Now, I'm really happy that Bobbi Brown brought back those blushes because, you know, not only are they some of my favorite, but they really are like the perfect accompaniment to the eyeshadow quads. So we have 2 of the eyeshadow quads. And again, here's the packaging up close. So we do have magnetic closure. You can see it's a fairly large size palette. For reference, this is my Sisley Blur Expert powder. So you can see the size difference there. And we have 2 color stories. This one here is star-crossed. And I have to say, these are special palettes because of the shades. So first up, this shade here, this is going to be called Stargazer. This is the Rich Luster formula. It's kind of like a warm ivory gold shade. And I think that's a nice shade. It looks really nice on the brow bone with a light dusting of powder. But then moving on, we go into a rich sparkle shade called Petal. So that's this one here. And look at that. I mean, look at the sheen on that. It's definitely a high luster shadow. We have some sparkle here, but it's not like loose, you know, providing a lot of fallout or anything like that. So it's really kind of staying put. And then we have another, this is a rich luster in the shade Celestial. So rich sparkle and then rich luster here. You can see that we have a very similar sheen, but less sparkle to it. And look at this shade. So here we have, it looks kind of purple, right? Like kind of like a light lavender. You can see a little bit of a blue reflect. And then when the light hits it, you get kind of more of that warm terracotta mixed with pink in there as well. So it's kind of a duochrome shade. And then we have a rich matte in the shade Immortal. So this is a nice creamy matte. You can put this on. One of the things I love about the Luxe matte shadows is they are so easy to get a very light dusting of or to build them up. So you can really, you know, start off and just build those up without having to worry about, did I tap off my brush enough and so forth. So these are the shades. So one more time, we have Stargazer, Petal, Immortal, and Celestial. So here they are on the arm. And I did go through all of the palettes I have in the singles from Bobbi Brown. I don't have any of these shades. I can't say for certain that these are all brand new shades, but they're all brand new shades to me. This is the other palette called Milky Way. And, you know, it's really a toss-up as to which one's a better palette. I really like both of them. So this first shade here, you can see this is a rich sparkle in the shade. This is going to be Lunar. And you can see this is going to be cooler. You get a little bit of a silvery pink hue to it, you know, kind of like a pinkish moonlight. Then we have a multi-chrome shade, and this is Incandescent. First thing this made me think of was either the Charlotte Tilbury Fire Rose, which I missed, or the Chantecaille Holiday Shadow. So we'll take a look at that. But you can see we have like that gold, orange, and pink, you know, shift there. And then this one here is Blossom. This is going to be your rich luster shade. So we're following the same pattern of formulas. So we have less sparkle here, but notice that this is going to be more pink, but we have kind of that peachy orange flip to it. So it's almost like these two shades kind of go together. One's a little bit lighter, one's a little bit deeper. And then our matte here is a rose shade, and it's just a really great neutral tea rose. So these are the two palettes. I don't typically love pink eyeshadows, but I love this one. So I think it's a mix of the finishes and the flips of the color that really help this one from becoming just another regular pink eye. So one more time, this is Lunar, Incandescent, Blossom, and Rose. So let's go ahead and we're going to go ahead and move on to the eye swatches and the demos. So as I mentioned, these palettes and the rest of the items from the collection are available currently at Selfridges. For the palettes, we have a 1-year shelf life, and these are made in Italy. And we have 10 grams of product. So they're definitely going to be, lasting a pretty long time. So formula-wise, if you're not familiar with the Luxe eyeshadow formula, think of kind of like a dense baked putty. That's kind of the texture that you have here. So what's really great about that is you can pick up a little bit of product and really build your level of pigmentation from there. Another great thing about these is even with these sparkle shades, you're not getting a ton of fallout. They kind of really stay put in that particular formula. Now, if you go and touch your eye or, you wipe it, yes, you're going to move it. You're going to get some sparkle on your face. But when I wear this and I'm not touching my eyes during the day, I don't end up with a mess underneath my eyes, which is really nice. And that's what I love about this Luxe eyeshadow formula. The sparkle shades, the sparkle's a little bit more firmly embedded in the formula. Now, according to the information at Selfridges, it says that these quads have a velvety formula that glides on and blends easily to deliver all-day wear, while chromatic pigments create the ultimate 3D metallic effect. And I have to say, I really like these. I'm very happy with these palettes. I think they are a great formula, great shades. I want to mention though that although we do have star-crossed with a deep purple at the bottom there, overall, both of these palettes both kind of run to the warmer side. So we do have, a smattering of cool shades mixed in here, such as the deep plum in Star-Crossed, and, actually the iridescent blossom shade in the bottom left-hand corner of Milky Way has a coolish tone when before the light flips it, and then it becomes a little bit warmer. So, you do have a little bit of coolness, but overall, both of these palettes are going to run neutral, leaning warm. I would put them more closer to like a light warm in the spectrum. Now, while we're looking at the eye swatches and the demos, I want to share with you the brushes that I'm using in here. And we're going to take a look at these separately, but these are kind of your demos utilizing these brushes. So for all of the eye swatches for the individual shades, we're using the Kyoto Yoshiki. This is a 3D eyeshadow brush, and it's using high-grade Psycho goat hair. So it's incredibly soft. You can use it with liquids, creams, or powders. And it's a 3D shape, which this is, it's a little bit more unique for an eyeshadow. And one of the great things about that, if you're familiar with some of the 3D blush brushes and so forth, which I personally love and use frequently, we have one side that's going to be kind of flat, and then the other side is going to sort of curve. And because of that, you can utilize them differently. So you can use kind of this flatter edge to really get into that crease area, or to, get a little bit more precision. But for laying things down on the actual mobile lid or buffing into the crease a little bit, you can just use that curved side and kind of wiggle the tip of the bristles into the crease. And so it's a very functional brush. This is incredibly soft because it is a high-grade Psycho. It is going to be a little bit softer than your regular goat hair brushes, and it's really awesome. So this one was gifted to me from Fude Bobo. Actually, all of the brushes featured here today were gifted as part of a PR package from Fude Bobo. And I absolutely love purchasing from her. She's fantastic. She gets these really great collections, and she does a lot of collaborations with Chikuhodo and Kyoto to make some really special brushes. So I'm actually going to order one of these as well because it's just such a great brush. So this is definitely one that's worth getting multiples of, in my opinion. For the demos of the actual eye looks and the look I'm currently wearing right now, which is a blend of both palettes, I did utilize the small crease brush from the Sonia G Koi series, but the majority of the time I used two brushes from Bobo and Chikuhodo. This is from the Nebula series, and I have featured some of the other brushes from this series before. One of my favorite brushes of 2024, and actually it's probably going to go on my all-time favorite list, is a CH1, which is a 3D shaped blush brush. And I actually just ordered another one of those this morning because it's that great. So she has expanded her collection with two new brushes. And we are looking at a flat lay down brush that is made out of weasel and Fitch hair. And this is going to be a mix that is really great for laying down shimmer shades in particular. It works really well with cream and liquid shadows as well because it's going to be a bit stiffer. So you're not really worrying about, you know, oh, if I move this brush the wrong way, are some of the glitter particles going to scatter? This is pretty stiff. So it's really great for laying things down. Because it is stiff though, I wouldn't recommend using this in the crease or it will feel a little bit too stiff, a little scratchy there. So the Fitch hair is coarse and soft. The weasel hair is stiff. So the blend of these two together really makes an ideal combination for anything with shimmer, or I really like it for something a little bit firmer, like a cream product. This brush you could even use for concealer. I would prefer it slightly larger for concealer. It's really meant to be an eyeshadow brush, but I think it's a really great option. And if you wear shimmer shadows a lot, this is definitely one that, you know, you might be interested in. The other brush that we see here is the S02, and this is going to be a small pencil brush. This one here has a mix of weasel hair and Psycho goat hair. And this is great for eyeliner. You can also use this in the inner corner. It's a little bit the bristles are a little bit too short to really utilize for laying down product in a larger area. But it's really great for eyeliner because it stays nice and stiff at the tip, so you can get more precision with this. And it's pretty soft. That Psycho goat hair in there really helps keep it pretty soft and comfortable to use. And, you know, I think it really gives a lot of nice precision. So let's take a quick look at these brushes just so you can see them up closer. Now, I have not washed them since using them for the demos, but this here is the Kyoto Yoshiki 3D brush. And you can see that this side here is going to be flat. And you can see how this curves. So that really makes it ideal to kind of do one and done shadow. You can then turn it and use the tip to kind of get into more precise areas. Even if you want to smudge something under the eye, it's too soft to have, you know, to really get precision under the eye. You know, it's going to be something that you smudge because, I mean, look at those bristles. You know, they are incredibly soft. So this is the 3D brush. And the only brush I have that is also 3D for eyeshadow would be this Chikuhodo FO10. And I like this brush, but it's not quite as effective as I had originally envisioned. I do have two of them though, so I do like it enough. But you can see this one's gonna be a little bit wider, but our angle here isn't quite as steep, which means that we don't really see quite as much of that 3D effect. And it's not necessarily there's not as much of a difference between the two sides, making it not quite as multifunctional as this one. Now, this is the lay down brush from the Nebula series from Chikuhodo and Bobo. So this is our Fitch and Weasel hair. And you can see that we just have a really nice shader style. Now, my closest comparison would be the Esam W23. You can see that this is a smaller version, and they do have other sizes in this brush, but you can see that this one's a little bit smaller than the Chikuhodo and Bobo. This is sable hair, so we are going to have some similar properties here, but you can see that this is going to be slightly, you know, overall, this is, all the hairs stay together. We have a bit more flexibility overall because it's longer, but the actual hair fibers sticking together, I would say they stick together slightly more firmly in the Chikuhodo and Bobo, making it a little bit stiffer overall. And again, both of these brushes are great for shimmer. So another comparison here is Sonia G Flat Definer. This is our S02, so you can see we have a really nice mix of goat and weasel hair, and we do have pointed tips here on this series. And we have this beautiful black to blue gradient with a little bit of shimmer in there like starlight. And just for comparison here, this is the Sonia G Flat Definer. So you can see we also have blue. It's slightly brighter blue, so they're not going to be the same. But I wanted to show you shape-wise. These are similar in shape. The Sonia G is going to be a bit more narrow and slightly longer. And I wanted to show you here this dyed goat hair for the Sonia G. Look how much softer that is versus the stiffness you get with the Bobo Chikuhodo. So I have to say the flat definer I usually use in the inner corner. Sometimes I'll use it to smudge under the eye, but it's not quite stiff enough to get a thin line unless you're using something like a liquid. And I feel like the Chikuhodo Bobo is actually, it's a little bit better. So if you like a thin line, this is a really great powder liner brush. You could definitely use it with liquids as well. I love finding a brush that works with powder eyeshadow for eyeliners because a lot of times that's what I like to do, is just take the deeper shade and use it for that. And a brush that will still give me precision with that, I think is great. So this is definitely worth looking into if you love using powder eyeshadows as eyeliner as well. All right, so I hope that was helpful with the brushes. Let's take a look at these swatches one more time. We've got Starcrossed from Bobbi Brown and then Milky Way here. And I want to do just a couple of quick comparisons for the shade in the Milky Way palette. So this is Gold Leaf. This is from Shantakai, and this was actually a repeat shade from, forget, I didn't have it, but from one of their previous collections many years ago. And you can see how similar those are. Those two shades are very, very close. So if you missed out on that, this palette from Bobbi Brown might be worth looking at. I also want to take a look at Divine Rose from Pat McGrath. And we'll see how this shade here compares. And we'll put Divine Rose right there. You can see it has more pink. It's actually like a deeper version of the Blossom shade in comparison. While we have this palette out, let's take a look at some of the other shades. This is kind of that rose shade down there. You can see how that compares. It's going to be deeper. We have this sparkly shade here. We'll put that up here near the lunar shade. You can see it's going to be warmer, more champagne, and it's really more of a loose, intense sparkle. And that's it. There isn't really anything more similar to any of the other shades in this palette. But I hope those comparisons were helpful. And then next, let's move on to the new Bobbi Brown liquid lipsticks. So these are the matte liquid lipsticks. This is going to be our regular permanent packaging. Again, I've only seen these at Selfridges so far, but they are permanent, so they should be coming soon. And then this one here goes with the Glow with Love collection that we are looking at today. So this is limited edition pink packaging. When we open these up, we do have a doe foot applicator here, and you can see we've got a slant on one side and edge on the other, so we can really kind of get around that lip line. And then when you're closing this, it feels like it's closed here, but you can see that these lines are not meeting up. You need to really firmly twist that. So just make sure you do that. So on my pink one, it twists a little bit. It doesn't feel quite as tight. So I'm sure, you know, they'll all loosen up with time, but just something to know when you do close these, make sure that your line becomes solid and straight. So let's go ahead and swatch these. So we'll put these here on my hand. And this one here is shade 401, Lunch Date. And you can see it is kind of a coral shade here, a bit of a bright coral. And then our next shade here is 404, Downtime. And this is what's on my lips right now. You can see it kind of looks like a warm mauve. So kind of like your mauve with a little bit of a soft brick terracotta mixed into it. But on the lips, you can see it kind of ends up with a little bit of a peachy hue. So again, my undertone is neutral with some cool overtones. So I'm neutral leaning cool. But these are the two shades, 401 lunch date, 404 downtime. Let's take a look at the lip swatches. So as I mentioned, the gold packaging here represents those in the permanent line. We have 12 shades in the permanent line. These retail for $40 US on the Selfridges site. So we'll see what they are when they come to the US. And according to the information on Selfridges, it says they feature a creamy texture for moisturization and a soft matte finish. Now, as you're looking at the lip swatches, you can see that right away you're going to get kind of that blurred lip look. A lot of times when we are using products to create that lip look, they have a lot of powder in them and they can feel a bit drying on the lips, particularly as time goes on. I have to say these feel very moisturizing and comfortable on the lips. If you put this on and you don't blot it out and you leave it kind of creamy, the creamy texture will remain, for several hours, but it really feels weightless. Like I actually forget that I have it on until I go and I smack my lips together. Now, my one caveat here, my one little issue is that as time goes on and that creamy layer kind of blots off and you're continuing to wear it without touching up, it does end up fading a little bit patchy. And you can see that here in this little wear test. This was after about 6 hours or so with eating and drinking. So you can see that the creamy layer, it kind of wore off. It definitely still has a beautiful look to it, but when you look close, then you can see it's a little bit patchy, not quite as evenly dispersed as it was previously. I want to mention though that these are incredibly comfortable on the lips. I'm really impressed with how they feel on the lips. We've seen some other creamy matte liquid lipsticks that have come out and some of them haven't been as successful. Like I'm thinking of the Byredo liquid matte lipsticks. Those were creamy, they stayed creamy, but they were also kind of messy throughout the day. Although these do stay creamy, the texture is so light and featherweight that you don't feel them on the lips, but they're also not really moving around either. So I have to say, I think they were really successful with that formula. My one issue is the way they wear down. So I would say once that creamy layer starts wearing off, you really either want to touch up or go in with some gloss or something so you can kind of smoothly disperse the rest of the pigments. As for product details, we have 6 milliliters of product and these are made in Korea. Overall, I have to say I do like the formula a lot. I can't say that they are a favorite because of that patchiness that develops over time, but I love the way they feel on my lips and I love that effortless blurred lip look. Like you can just swipe it on and get that blurred lip look. You don't need to take your finger and smudge anything or anything like that. So I have mixed feelings about them, but overall, I would say that I like them more so than the patchiness being an issue because again, the patchiness is only once it starts to wear away and I can easily just apply some lip balm or gloss or touch up again to reinvigorate them. So one more time with the swatches, we have 401, which is lunch date, and 404 downtime. And I would have to say I don't really have a favorite between the two of them. I'd love to see some cooler tones in this line. None of the shades are really all that cool tone in the line that we have available so far at Selfridges. So this, I would have to say, is, you might think it's cool looking at the promo photos, but it's not. It's actually going to be a warm shade. And this is actually going to be more neutral because we don't have as much of a warm base to it. So it's kind of a bright warmth, but we have a bit more of a transparent base to that, making it a little bit more neutral overall. So just a few differences there, but they both kind of give me a little bit of a peachy look on the lips. So overall, yeah, I think they need to expand the shade range already. So let's go ahead and we're going to take a look at this Bobo and Chikuhodo brush. This is a powder foundation brush. It is currently sold out, but they are restocking very soon, just in a couple of weeks. So I wanted to share this with you before the restock happens. It's totally worth getting. So it's incredibly soft. You can see it's dense. This is great for buffing. I don't want to touch the lipstick, but you can see it's great for buffing in products. I can use it for blush, bronzer, powder foundation, setting powder. So we're going to take a look at this. We'll come back to the brush in a few minutes, but we're going to look at the brush in some demos with the RMS powder. So I have spoken about this powder a couple times, but now let's take a look at some demos and side-by-side comparisons. Now, I haven't tried the brand new Givenchy powder yet. It's not available here in the States yet. Some countries do have it, where they actually replaced the talc with, I believe they replaced it with kaolin. So, you know, I'll have to look into that more once we get it here in the US. But I've been kind of looking for a replacement powder for the Givenchy Prisme Libre powder, or loose powders. And they are, you know, kind of my all-time favorite. So I wanted to do a side-by-side comparison of the RMS with one of the Givenchy powders. And I don't have one that's like the same shade. So unfortunately, the powders for comparison are both lean a little lavender, which is going to be a little bit cooling of a tone on my skin. So color-wise, you'll see differences. But I want you to take a look at the texture on my skin from the RMS versus the Givenchy, and the RMS versus the Suku. And this is the most recent Suku loose powder, which is also lavender. So I have to say, these are all powders that I love. The RMS, I think, is a decent substitute for the Givenchy. Is it going to be exactly the same? It's not. I think one of the biggest differences with the Givenchy is the color correction from the different shades you get in there. Now, usually their limited edition powders have shimmer. The RMS powder does not have any shimmer. It does come in some different shades, but we're not looking at color correction in here by adding like a lavender or a green shade or anything like that. So formula-wise, though, I think this is a really great loose powder. It's finely milled. It, you know, kind of evens out your complexion a little bit. And I think it really does a nice job as a setting powder. If I had to, you know, if I had to choose, the Givenchy original here is still my favorite. I do think, you know, that color correction really helps. And I feel like it looks ever so slightly more finely milled on the skin than the RMS. But out of all of the loose powders that I have, so far, this RMS powder is probably the closest to the Givenchy. And the Suku, I feel like, you know, it's also one of my favorite powders, but it gives you a bit more of a matte finish, a little bit more drying on the skin. It doesn't feel drying, but I mean, just that look in general compared to the RMS and the Givenchy. So I would have to say that these are kind of my closest comparisons here. Now, for the RMS powder, it does come with a powder puff. And you know, I'm not huge on powder puffs, so I actually removed mine. My one biggest flaw here is actually the lid, where, you know, I think it's cute how it has RMS, but and this little lid here is to keep your puff in, so everything stays nice and neat. But I'm somebody who likes to tap it into the lid, so that kind of gets in the way for me. So I have shade light for the RMS, and this is the Hydra Setting Powder. We have 10 grams of product, a 1-year shelf life, and it's made in Italy. So I have to say, I think it's a really great value and compared to the Givenchy, and it's a really great product. So I definitely think that it's worth looking into. Now, as you've looked at the demos, you could see I did use kind of that powder foundation brush. In some other demos, I've used the Chikuhodo and Bobo fluffy powder brush. And then I also used one of my favorite Eyeshadows finishing brushes. And my favorite way is actually to use one of these fluffier brushes to get a really light dusting of powder. So let's just take a quick look on my hand of the powders. I know it can be kind of hard to tell what the powders look like, you know, in a swatch. They don't swatch super well, but you can kind of get a little bit of an idea of the texture of things from a swatch. So here's the RMS, and this is going to be, again, shade light. We'll put this one right here in the middle, and you can see how nicely that goes on. It really smooths out, and you kind of have a bit of a matte, I would say like a satin matte finish to that. And then the Givenchy one that I used is going to be from Holiday a couple of years ago. This was Lumiere Polaire number 12. So we've kind of got a bunch of shades kind of mixed in here together. And let's see here, we'll put that one right here. You can see how those are. They're, you know, they do have similar textures. One of the things I've never liked about the Givenchy powders though is the square packaging. It fits nicely in a drawer, but it's such a pain to get the actual lid on. So this is the Suku loose powder, and you can see we have more of that net cushion product. We're going to put this one right here on this side. You can see it's very smooth. It goes on nicely, almost like melting cream. But because of that, it is going to be a little bit heavier looking on the skin with a dense brush. And this is one that I would definitely recommend using with a lighter fluffy brush, something like this Eyeshadows brush, which also comes with a geisha on it. Or this is the Chikuhodo and Bobo collaboration brush for a powder brush. So those are some go-tos. You can see here that our design is going to be the same on both of these, but now we have this great powder foundation brush, which is nice and dense. And if you take a look at the Year of the Dragon Kabuki brush from, and this is from Year of the Dragon this year, the Lunar New Year, you can see size-wise how much more dense and shorter this is. So we're looking at basically half size. So one of the things that makes this incredibly soft is we have a mix of silver fox hair and Psycho goat hair. So some people do use fox hair with creams and liquids, and if you are one of those people, then you could use this with your liquid and cream products. You could use it as a regular foundation brush. Personally, I think this is better as a powder foundation brush, and that's how it is described in the listing as well, as a powder foundation brush, because I do find the silver fox hairs they're incredibly soft, but they are delicate. So I think this works the best for a powder foundation. I'm still searching for my favorite. My favorite is the Suku powder foundation, but they don't have a great shade for me. So this would be the brush that I would use for that though. In the meantime, this is also an excellent brush for any sort of firmly pressed powders. So if you have a firmly pressed light blush that you kind of want to put all over, or bronzer, or something like the Sisley Blur Expert, or one of the Chantecaille, their blur powders. So this brush is ideal for all of those. So again, this is Silver Fox mixed with Psycho, whereas this fluffy powder brush is going to be Gray Squirrel and Psycho mix. So they're both mixes, both very soft. Between the two though, this one here with the Silver Fox is going to be a little softer. The Silver Fox is a little bit softer overall than the Gray Squirrel, especially when you get these longer hairs. It's harder to get those incredibly soft, downy hairs. So I think this is an excellent brush. Sold out pretty much immediately when this originally launched. Thank you so much to Bobo for sending this one to me. And it is relaunching very soon, end of July, beginning of August. So definitely keep an eye out for that. I'll post when it's available. So overall, we've gone through a lot of products today. I think we have some really great launches from Bobbi Brown. I do really like the whole collection. However, if I had to pick and choose, first of all, these blushes, I mean, they are a favorite of mine for years now. So I would definitely go with the blush as a number one, followed by one of the eyeshadow palettes. I really don't have a preference between the two. I really like both of them, but they do run a little bit warm. So they're not necessarily going to be best for everybody. It kind of depends what you have in your collection. I would say go with Milky Way unless you already have, you know, the Chantecaille shade or perhaps the Charlotte Tilbury Fire Rose. If you already have those, this palette might not be as special or unique. So it's hard to say. I think the matte liquid lipsticks are a nice lip product. I love the way they feel, but I don't love their shade range or the fact that it gets a little patchy as it wears off. It's an easy fix, but those are, you know, just some things to note there. So brushes, you know, I love all the brushes here, but my favorites would be this one here. And then the not the Chikuhodo. So this is the Chikuhodo Bobo powder foundation brush. And then also this 3D eyeshadow brush from Kyoto Yoshiki. Those would be my top two from today. And then we also talked about the RMS powder, and this was following up from a previous video on this. I think it is a great product, definitely worth checking out if you're in the market for a loose powder. I do have couple other powders coming up soon. So thank you so much for tuning in. I hope this has been helpful, and I will see you very soon. Please leave your thoughts and comments down below in the comment section. Have a great day.